Alright, so let's get right into it. Starting off with the Shanks leader. His effect is just activate main once per turn. If you go Dawn -3, he's going to give all of your film type characters plus 2000 attack. So he's basically Moby Dick on a leader, which is awesome. He doesn't give himself plus 2000, which kind of sucks, but when you're swinging with that endgame board, it's not really going to matter because you're going to have huge threats like Douglas Bullet and everything like that. So this leader skill actually is like a pretty good one. Moving on to our only one drops that we run, and of course it's going to be Buena Festa. Buena Festa is mainly just our searcher of the deck. He can be used as a 2k counter, but I rarely use him as that. Buena Festa is just going to look at the top 5 cards of the deck and grab up to one film type card other than himself, bottom deck everything. So he's going to be able to grab all of your vanillas, your Utas, your Douglas Bullets, and of course if you're running the events, he can grab those too. So he's all around a great card for this deck, makes the whole deck consistent. And then starting off with our 2 drops, we have Karina. Karina's a really cool card for this deck because she'll usually be helping me out with the Zoro matchup. On turn 1, you want to go second. So just playing her into, a Zoro board, she's at 3k, so she could swing into things. But she also has this really amazing effect. She's going to be the main source of ramp for your film cards. So it's activate main once per turn. You can rest this character and then trash one film type card. And if you have less Dawn than your opponent, which more often than not you're going to, unless you're fighting like a Kaido or Magellan, they might have less Dawn than you do. But you're gonna ramp 2 Dawn and rest them. So she actually accelerates you a whole turn as opposed to the other Dawn accelerations, which is only like 1 rested. And then also with Shanks' leader effect, if she's still on the board, they'll usually not swing at her and she'll usually stick on the board. So if she is on the board while Shanks is powering everything up, she turns into a 5k, which is pretty useful sometimes just to get more swings in, but mainly she's used for that really cool ramp effect, and she also combos with a lot of other things in my deck like Douglas Bullet and Gil Tesoro. So moving on to some other 2 drops, I run 4 2k counter Shikis. This card is great because of pretty much 3 different things. 1, he's a 2k counter, so if I have him in hand, he's great. I could use him to counter out. But he also has this cool trigger effect where you go Dawn -1 once you get hit, and then you could activate his trigger just to play this card. So because Shanks is going to give you plus 2000 on every film character, you want to go as wide as possible, and that trigger effect is really going to help you. He's also not a bad turn 1 play, just like Karina is, because he's at that 3000 stat line. You could swing into Zoros, into Bonnies and Momonosuke's and everything like that. And then of course he's going to turn into a 5k just like Karina with Shanks' leader skill. And then the last of our 2 drops, I play 2 Anne. I mainly only play 2 Anne because she has no counter. The 3k is nice at times because again, plus 2000, she could turn into attacker on your turn. But then she still will get popped by things like Vista, Seaquake, White Beard effects. But the good thing is we actually run a lot of high cost blockers, so you don't necessarily need Anne most of the time. She's just kind of a card that could round out your curve and also just be an attacker when you need her to be. Moving on to the only 3 drops that I run, it's Baccarat. She's just, not a lot to say about this card. She's just a vanilla 3000, 5k. With the Shanks effect, she's going to be swinging for 7k, which is like awesome numbers to swing for. If my opponent forces me to go first, I will usually, try to hit these on curve. But again, this is usually a going second deck because you want the extra cards and also just to create a wide board. So she's just kind of a backup plan for a 7k swing. And then honestly, the MVP of the deck, we have Ein. She is a great card, especially if you're going second, because on turn 2, you could play her right away, and she's a 4-drop 5k, no counter, but her effect is amazing. It's just on play, add up to 1 rested Dawn to your Dawn deck, so she's gonna ramp you 1 Dawn, which is amazing. She's gonna help you get multiple Shanks effects off, and then of course we're playing purple, so there's gonna be multiple Dawn minus effects that you're gonna want to use, especially when we start talking about like Gil Tesoro. You want to use him often to draw as many cards as possible, so Ein is gonna let you get back that Dawn. And then of course, when you use the leader skill, she's going to turn into a 7k attacker. Honestly, the other MVP of the deck is going to be the 4-drop blocker Uta. This deck is actually surprisingly good against Whitebeard because Whitebeard's going to take damage every single turn. So what you could actually do is you don't even have to swing with your characters against Whitebeard. What you could do is just swing with your leader, try to take cards out of their hand by swinging big, and then also just build a board. Uta's going to help you with that because of her effect. So she's a blocker. But not only that, she has the on block effect that if you go Dawn -1, you get to rest one of your opponent's characters that cost 5 or less. And this is really important in the Whitebeard matchup because you're able to rest their high cost threats, and especially for Whitebeard, you're able to just rest those vanillas that they have. She's also very useful for resting things like Marcos or blockers and everything like that. So there's just a bunch of utility that you get out of her. And then of course, when you need her to be, she's a 7k swing. And then moving on to the last of our 4-drop, we are running 4 Bins. He is just a 4-drop 6k. He is the Atmos, the Frankie, the Luffy of this deck. He's absolutely amazing when you have Shanks leader up because he's going to go all the way up to 8,000, which is hitting Whitebeard for, 2 cards. If you attach one more, you're hitting for 9,000. If you have multiple of these on the board at once, your board gets very threatening, especially when you have things like 8-cost Bullet on the field, because it's going to be very hard for them to counter like an 8 or like 2 9,000 swings along with like this 12k double swing. So you could actually steal a lot of games with this leader skill. By no means am I saying this is like the most OP deck ever, but it's definitely better than I think that people expect it to be. And then of course, moving on to our 5 costs, we're running 4 Queen. Queen's effect is just too good not to run. Go Dawn -1, draw 2, trash 1. Also a blocker at 6k, which is an amazing stat line. The only thing this thing loses to is pretty much Jet Pistol, Gordon, removal, and everything like that. But other than those things, this card is great. He's at a 6k stat line, which makes him easier to protect if you want to block with him. And then again, just drawing those cards is really nice. Going Dawn -1 isn't even that bad in this deck because you have the Corinna to go back up to Dawn after you've used this effect. But of course, it's Queen. We don't have to explain it. We're playing purple. Another self-explained card is X-Drake. So he's just a 2k counter most of the time, but he has that amazing effect of going Dawn -1, and then your opponent has to trash 1 card from their hand. So you're getting rid of your opponent's resources. Both Queen and X-Drake will not be able to get that plus 2,000 effect from Shanks, but it honestly doesn't even matter because X-Drake is just one of the most playable 2ks in purple. Moving on to our next set of 5 costs, we have Douglas Bullet. Bullet is really funny in this deck because, again, he's at this really good 6,000 stat line where he's going to be turning into an 8k swing because he's a film card. And then also on play, he's going to let you control the board a little bit because you go Dawn -1 and then you're going to rest something 4 or lower. And again, there's a lot of really good cards right now that cost 4 or lower, like Marco, Borsellino you could swing into. A lot of the Whitebeard vanillas like Atmos and Frankie and everything like that are at that 4 cost. So Douglas Bullet is going to really help you kind of get cards out of people's hands and even like control the board a little bit. And then of course, when you're ready to do that leader skill, +2, 8,000 swing. And then rounding out our 5 costs, I would run more Guild Tesoro honestly, but whenever I put him up to like 3 or 4, he just clogs up my hand, and you don't want to have your hand clogged by things that aren't counters because this deck, can die very fast. But Guild Tesoro's effect is absolutely insane. It's just when attacking, go Dawn -2, and then you're gonna draw 2 cards. So if you have him plus Corinna, you're basically using Queen effect for free. And also if you're at a healthy Dawn, sometimes you don't even need to use the ramp effect to go back up in Dawn. You don't mind just going down -2 Dawn, just having the 2 cards in your hand. And what he allows you to do is just gain a ton of resources because you can use things like Union Armada, your blockers to protect him, and then he's just going to be drawing you 2 cards every single turn. And then of course, he is also a film card, plus 2k, 8k for an 8k swing with Shanks leader. And then rounding out our 6 drops, I just run 2 of the 6 cost king. This is mainly a Whitebeard check because if you get to play this on like one of their Frankies or like a Marco or a Luffy or something like that, it's very beneficial to you and it sets them back by a long shot, right? Because you've replaced their 4 cost 6k with your own like 7k, and even if he doesn't get the plus 2,000 from Shanks leader, he's still a really good card. Like 7k is a great stat line. Attach 1 more Dawn onto him, he's swinging 8k into Whitebeard, which will hopefully rip 2 cards out of his hand, and then into any other leader, like you're already ripping 2 cards out of his hand. And then of course the all-star of the deck, we have 8 cost Douglas Bullet. This card is honestly what makes this deck even remotely playable. Most of the time, your opponent is only going to let you have like 1 or 2 life, and it's going to be really hard to fight for the board between like all of, you know, the KO effects and kind of removal there is in the game. And just like in general, it's going to be hard for you to swing with your characters and get value out of them without using the Shanks leader effect. And this is where Douglas Bullet comes in, because you could play him on curve, and then the next turn you could do his effect, which is activate main. Once per turn, you're going to go Dawn -4, and then you're going to rest up to 2 cards that are 6 cost or less, and he gains double attack. So he's going to be really good for catching up in the game. If you want to use him as board removal, that's okay too. Like, you could rest 2 things and swing into them, but mainly I use him just for that like 1 turn kill, because he is probably not going to be blocked, because with Shanks effect he's going to be at 12,000 power with double attack, which is eating away so many cards out of your opponent's hand. He's also really great into decks where they rely on sitting behind blockers in the late game. So against Law, he's really good. Ivankov, he's amazing, because Ivankov players are not going to have enough counter in their hand to counter 12k. And also they're usually sitting on like a Dofi and a Galdino, or like a Dofi and an Inazuma. So you're going to be able to rest those 2 blockers and just swing for double attack. And then also, of course, like he's even good into like things like 8 cost Kid, because you're going to be able to rest like the 2 blockers that they have, unless it's a 7-drop Eustace Kid. And then you're going to be able to swing at him for like 12,000, which is going to be way too many cards if they don't have like a Punk Gibson or anything. That 8 cost Kid is usually dying in that turn. And then of course we run our event package. I run 2 Judgment of Hell and 2 Union Armada. This could be Thunder Bagua. I'm still playing around on which one I like better. Hell's Judgment is just pretty self-explanatory. It's one of the best events in the game right now, especially into things like Zoro, and Law is going to be showing up a lot more after the top in Illinois. So this kind of helps you just survive like the decks that, you know, have like the chumpy attacks like for 5 and 6k. Union Armada is a really cool card. So it's a 2 cost counter that goes up to 4k, but if you use it on a film type character, that character cannot be KO'd by anything during the turn. So even if they're trying to use like a jet pistol, even if they're using like a Robin or like a Whitebeard effect, it cannot be KO'd in the turn. To remove it, you have to bounce it, because even if you like rest it and swing into it, it's not going to get KO'd. Even if you use removal on it, it's still not going to get KO'd. And then it also has the added effect of trigger, add up to 1 Dawn card from your Dawn deck and set it as active. So you get an active Dawn ramp, which is really cool as well. Again, this could be a Thunder Bagua, but this is just what I've been rolling with. I've found that it's really clutch in the late game scenarios where, you know, you just need to preserve your board and you need that like 1 or 2 characters to live. You could just slap on Union Armada at the last turn, get that big board preserved, and then swing in for plus 2,000 for everything. But what do you guys think about this deck? Personally, I don't think it's going to be that competitive until we get like a lot better film cards. I think Shanks as a leader has a lot of potential if we get more film cards that are like really good. But right as it stands right now, I don't think this deck is too competitive. It has a really funny matchup against Whitebeard, but every other deck it's going to be very difficult to navigate around because you don't have a lot of special things other than your leader skill, which is only really relevant at certain parts of the game. And if it's not impactful in those parts, you're just going to end up losing because you don't have a lot of value within your cards other than, you know, things like Guild Tesoro and Karina, which are very niche effects to get off. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And as always, thank you for watching. Good luck in any school or like work things you're doing, and I'll see you on the next one.